Now to the unease in Charlotte, North Carolina. Protests continuing after the city's police department released videos of the deadly shooting of Keith Scott. Police killings are likely to be a big point of focus at tonight's debate. And joining us right now to talk about it is Marc Morial. He's the president and CEO of the National Urban League. And
hey, good morning. Good to be with you.
So, before we get to the debate, let me just ask you this. You saw the new video that came out. Did it change your mind about anything?
Well, I think people should focus on what the issue is. The issue really is did the officer have any reason to feel that his life was threatened? That's the standard for the excessive use of force. Right. And I didn't see anything on that video. Of course, it's not conclusive. That would give rise to the officer feeling threatened by the actions of Mr. Scott.
There seems to be a big debate about whether he had a gun in his hand at all, and yet you hear, but you don't see, when I say you hear it on the tape, the police officer saying, put down the gun, put down the gun. Do you believe that he was lying?
Let me say this. So it's important you start at, I believe North Carolina is a state where it's legal to carry a gun. So the mere fact that he was carrying a gun. The issue was the gun being held in a threatening posture. The use of force by law enforcement is very limited to an instance where, one, the officer feels that his life is threatened or her life is threatened, or two, a third party's life is threatened. So that's really I think the standard. What's interesting to me, though, is to compare and contrast Charlotte to Tulsa. There's been little news coverage about Tulsa because Tulsa very quickly released the tape. The DA there quickly made a judgment call that charges should be brought and brought charges. Whereas I think in Charlotte, had they released the tape 3 days earlier, I still don't see why.
But do you worry that we're sort of living, we think we're now living in some kind of reality television world where everything has to be done instantaneously, where we don't, I mean, the argument on the other side, right, from the justice side, the Justice Department and the police world would say we need time to investigate, and that there's so much public pressure that we're trying to somehow placate the public as opposed to look at
every case is different, and I agree. Traditionally, in the pre-social media world, right, that was basically the rule of thumb. I think we're in a different world. Look, we're on live TV now.
Live TV. I think part of the concern, at least some reasons that have been given in the past, the reason they haven't released the video is they don't want to taint a jury pool that will eventually be seeing this. Obviously, Chicago used that to extreme, horrible positions for going along with that. In Tulsa is much clearer, too. This is a murkier situation, which may explain the delay in the release versus...
I think the reality is we're in a different time, and people are demanding a sense of transparency. I think had Charlotte's law enforcement officers said, look, it's going to take us a week or 10 days, but you see, the police chief made a mistake. You don't, quote, not release the tape, then say, I saw the tape, and begin to characterize what you saw in the tape. If you're going to tamp down, then what you have to do is say, we're not going to discuss, we're not going to release any evidence for 10 days, 20 days, 30 days. There are ways to handle it.
The way that this played out, though, in North Carolina, and I agree with you that you need, if you're going to use excessive force, you better have a good reason. And that should have nothing to do with race whatsoever. Whenever a policeman with a gun there should only be certain times when he uses it. And it seems like it's suddenly, even in North Carolina, it's bogged down in racial overtones, even though the policeman was African American.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it results in what I don't think is good for anyone, where where neighborhoods get disrupted and property gets destroyed and everything else, when in fact it may have had, if we looked at it just as there should never be police brutality, or there should never be excessive use of force when it's not called for, no matter, it should be colorblind, no matter
You're absolutely right. I think, and I double-checked this morning, and I think that from what I understand from reading news reports, that the protests have mostly been peaceful after the first night where there was violence. And I support the right of people to protest. Don't support any violence.
A lot of out-of-state guys, too, though.
I should note, by the way, Bank of America shut down some of its offices in Charlotte over the past 2 days. I don't know if they're opening today. Let me ask you a question that relates to the debate. This is Donald Trump back in August on race. He says, right now, you walk, this is to group of African Americans. He says, right now, you walk down the street, you get shot. Look at the statistics. We will straighten it out. If you keep voting for the same failed politicians, you will keep getting the same results.
Yeah, the thing about what I made of that, there's no plan. It's something we know, and that is there's too much gun violence in American cities. That's not a revelation, right? But the issue is, what's your concrete ideas to do something about it? That's really the issue at hand. Not being diagnostic, being prescriptive, coming up with solutions. And I think tonight, when I think about tonight, I think of really three things. I think about temperament. I think about talent. That's all about presidential leadership. And because it's live TV, it's also about timing. So it's about one-liners from time to time, too. People love that. We all love that. We all remember it.
Do you think, though, the Democrats have failed the African-American community?
Let me say this. I think that the combination of leadership in this country has not done what should be done to address these systematic problems in Black America. But look, we celebrated with a great museum on Saturday, and so Black America is like any other community in America. It's got a set of challenges, but a grand set of successes and things to be proud of.
Is choice good or it's not good?
I mean,
are Democrats too tied and too beholden to the teachers' unions to get the kind of change we need?
I think that's kind of a 30,000-foot view of things. I think what we don't have in schools is the kind of commitment. Yeah, let's try some new ideas.
Right.
But let's make sure that we resource schools correctly. Let's make sure we have good teachers. Let's make sure we have good class size.
I mean, choices, that is different. And that's, I don't know, that's,
here's the thing.
When I think of democratic ideas and solutions to problems like this, all I see is teachers' unions, and it just doesn't seem like we're getting anywhere.
The problem is there's no evidence. There's no evidence where, quote, so vouchers have been tried that it's yielded a better success.
Mark, let me ask you one very direct question, because it came up repeatedly at the museum event over the weekend. Do you believe that Donald Trump is a racist?
I believe that Donald Trump has made racist statements. I can't examine a person's heart or a person's mind, and I don't characterize a person in that way. I do look at people's public actions, and I do think statements about building walls, about targeting Muslims, those things fall into the category of bigotry and racism. It's the statements and the actions. I never characterize a man. I can't see into his heart, his soul, his mind, or his intentions. But what we've got to do is judge